Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You know, the Liberal government is out of touch, and it's Canadians that pay the price. True. That's exactly what we're seeing with the carbon tax. It has a negative effect on everyone in different ways, but I'd like to focus, if I could, on the farmers who grow the food. They are seeing some of the worst impacts of the carbon tax. As more time goes on, farmers and ranchers have been facing higher input costs, including for the fuel that they need to use. They're getting crushed by rising fuel costs, and they're caught in an unfair position of absorbing costs at each and every stage of production. That's why Conservatives brought forward a common-sense solution that we thought would receive the support of all parties. Bill C-234 would provide an exemption from the carbon tax to all on-farm fuels. And everyone supported the idea and voted with us, except for the majority of the Liberal caucus, of course. Shameful. Most of them voted against it, but fortunately for Canadian farmers, Bill C-234 passed the House of Commons anyway. That was back in the spring. Eventually, the bill reached third reading over in the Senate. But it really seems that the Liberals cannot accept that their coalition partners in the NDP supported our bill. At the last opportunity, some senators appointed by the Prime Minister have been trying to shut it down. We've seen delays in passing it, but more recently there are amendments that have basically gutted C-234. This is right in line with the Liberal approach to this bill. If they can't stop it from passing, they want to at least make sure they'll provide the least amount of benefit possible to the farmers who grow our food. We know that the activist Environment Minister doesn't want any more carve-outs to his carbon tax, no matter how much it hurts Canadians. Madam Speaker, I originally called on the Prime Minister to tell his appointed senators to stop the blocking of Bill C-234. It seemed likely that the Environment Minister or the Minister of Agriculture might respond in question period, but instead, it was the Minister of Innovation, who I know is a very influential member in his caucus and in cabinet. And there are rumors that he might want to be their next leader soon. I hope that he will use his influence to exempt farm fuels from the carbon tax, or better yet, axe the tax altogether. And I would humbly suggest that if he included that in his leadership race bid when the time comes, that he might be the one to come out on top. But the situation with Bill C-234 has changed in some ways, but there's still a chance to pass it as the House of Commons intended. That needs to happen so that we can provide relief to our farmers and make a difference for Canadian families. It's not too late to fix the problem if only the Liberals really wanted to do that. But that's the question. What do they really want to do? Week after week, I've been bringing up different examples of how much the carbon tax is crushing farmers and ranchers. But the Liberals are not going to support giving them some relief if it means that this is what they want to happen. Is that part of the plan? Are they trying to make farming unaffordable, especially for the up-and-coming new generation of farmers? I hear about this regularly in my office, Madam Speaker. I got people, when I go out and I host town halls, or if I'm just out buying groceries, it's amazing how many people come up to me and talk to me about either their situation with their family and their son that wants to take over the farm, or their daughter who wants to take over the farm, what that's going to look like, but also what the costs of that are going to look like, especially after 8 years of this Liberal government, and the fact that everything just is costing more and more and more. And is there a future for young producers? And I think that's what's at the heart of this question. That's at the heart of why Conservatives want to pass Bill C-234, to get that carve-out for all on-farm fuels, both for the farmers of the present, but also for the farmers of the future. I'm wondering if the Parliamentary Secretary could stand up today and confirm his support to repeal the carbon tax for all on-farm fuels, as Bill C-234 was originally intended and written to do.
Here, here.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, I would tell the member that the Government of Canada has and continues to support our farmers in many, many different ways. And what we continue to see, you know, and the member started off, I think, by saying, you know, the Liberal Party is out of touch, is the way he started off his comments, Madam Speaker. And nothing could be further from the truth in terms of if the member would only take a look in terms of the Mirror and the Conservative Party. You want to talk about being out of touch, Madam Speaker? Listen in terms of what Canadians have to say about things like the climate and our environment. Listen in terms of what it is that they have to say about the type of behavior that they are seeing more and more of every day. And what we are witnessing, Madam Speaker, inside the chamber, and I've talked about it earlier this morning, is a pattern that's coming out of the Conservative Party, and the member himself spoke on the issue. And that is the issue of deception. Madam Speaker, for example, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada travels the country to tell Canadians that he's going to get rid of the price on pollution, thereby making life more affordable. Madam Speaker, that's just not true. It's not going to make life more affordable. In fact, Madam Speaker, it's going to put less disposable income in the pockets of Canadians, a vast majority of the Canadians. So on the one hand, if he is saying that it's making life more affordable, and then in reality it's not, Madam Speaker, what does that remind you of? What it reminds me of is Donald Trump and MAGA politics that is creeping in from the South, using the leader of the official office, leader of the official opposition's office, in order to be able to bring in that style of politics. The member opposite just stood up and he's saying, well, you know what, on gas, on diesel. That's what he somewhat implied in some of his comments that he made. Is regular gas and diesel applied on farm fuels for the carbon tax for farmers? Madam Speaker, you know, they don't qualify that because that doesn't fit their agenda. And that's what I mean in terms of misleading, Madam Speaker. What we have witnessed is a Conservative Party today is more concerned about bumper sticker politics than they are about good, solid public policy. There was a time in which, and it wasn't that long ago, 2 years, just over 2 years ago, every member, including the member that just spoke, Madam Speaker, actually voted or had an election platform that said if elected, they would have a price on pollution, Madam Speaker. They said that in every 338 constituencies from coast to coast to coast. New leader comes in, and they do a flip-flop, and then they start spreading misinformation, Madam Speaker. That's the type of leadership that we have seen within the Conservative Party today. And you got a little bit of a dip of that by the person that just finished speaking, as he tried to give the impression as a government that we're not there to support farmers. When, Madam Speaker, I was in opposition when Stephen Harper gave it to the farmers, the wheat farmers, by getting rid of the Canadian Wheat Board. And Madam Speaker, as they applaud, he denied them the legislative right to have a referendum on the Canada Wheat Board, Madam Speaker, and he didn't think twice about getting rid of it. What about the piles of wet grain that sat in the prairies as boats weren't getting into the Vancouver, Madam Speaker? Where was the prairie members of Parliament, Madam Speaker, standing up for the farmer there? Or standing up for the government, the Harper government, to actually stand by the laws of Canada and allow for a referendum on the Canadian Wheat Board? Instead, they ditched it, Madam Speaker, on their own personal political agenda. They don't stand up.
Member for Cypress Hills, Gracelands.
Well, I can assure you that imprisoning farmers was a Liberal idea because they simply want to have grain marketing freedom. Like, how absurd is that? That's the Liberal Party for you. Now, Madam Speaker, farmers have always done more for the environment than this government would ever dream of. In fact, the parliamentary secretary admitted in his remarks that all that the carbon tax is an income redistribution scheme. You notice that the Liberals don't have any statistics to talk about how emissions have gone down thanks to the carbon tax, because the truth is they can't quantify it. So the only thing that they can talk about is the income redistribution scheme that the carbon tax has become. So I just want to make my final point here, Madam Speaker, that, again, it was farmers who came up with zero-till technology, or just the farming practice in and of itself. It was farmers who came up with that, not this government. It's farmers who came up with the 4R principle and have been practicing their farm for the last number of decades. It wasn't this government's idea. Farmers have and always will do more for the environment than they ever will.
Hear, hear. Well, Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Madam Speaker, and unlike the Conservative Party, they actually, the farmers recognize that climate change is real, unlike the Conservative Party, Madam Speaker. And unlike the rest of the world, Madam Speaker, contrary to the Conservative Party, there is a movement to have a price on pollution, whether it's in Ukraine, the European Union, many American states, and so forth. It's only the Conservative Party that wants to bring us back to the Stone Age. You know, you think Fred Flintstone is the leader of the Conservative Party, Madam Speaker. At the end of the day, this is good, sound policy. It's not about they talk about taxation. Well, they just don't understand it, Madam Speaker. They try to simplify it. At the end of the day, there's a good incentive. People will get more money in terms of net from the rebate than they will pay on the less amount of fossil fuels that they use. If the member doesn't understand that, well, that's not my problem. It's his problem, Madam Speaker.